Welcome to Indonesia, the largest archipelago in the world and home to some of the biggest unicorns in the region.
However, things were different back then. 10 years ago, the internet reached only 13% of the country's 230 million population. With the limited availability of physical infrastructure, amid the rapidly growing population, others may see a problem as it is. At East Ventures, we see it as an opportunity. We aim to provide a solution. East Ventures started with a mutual dream to be part of the solution, regardless of the challenges we may find ahead. We set sail by finding passionate founders who are eager to change Indonesia for the better. One by one, problem by problem, industry by industry. Our founders work hand in hand, forming a solid and integrated ecosystem by investing in a range of business verticals starting from marketplace, fintech, logistics, to new retail. We have been taking part in building Indonesia's digital economy, providing technology inclusion for MSMEs, and building the digital infrastructure, supporting national GDP, investing in many startups, increasing access to information, empowering people through education, enhancing access to the beauty industry, and strengthening the logistics network. Enabling a digital workforce, providing flexible offices. Today, Indonesia has one of the biggest digital economies in the world, with over 60% internet penetration rate. With the nation's brightest minds as our founders, we are beyond humbled to have been a part of this great journey. A decade of work feels just like yesterday, as we take on one opportunity at a time to take Indonesia to its golden era.
When the pandemic hit in early 2020, it became a game reset. Every high-touch and high-risk activity had been forced to move online. Ultimately, those in the digital industry are the winners. The pandemic has created a chance for entrepreneurs to rethink about problems in society and solve them efficiently through technology. East Ventures supported startup companies to identify these problems, as well as to focus on their core strengths so that they could adapt to the crisis, survive the worst of the storm, and come back stronger. Resilience, resourcefulness, and discipline become the key traits of success. The pandemic has served as a patch to Indonesia as a platform, which now has advanced digital infrastructure and more than 200 million internet users. In the end, COVID-19 is merely holding us back for a time. We are now witnessing how Indonesia's digital economy is preparing itself to slingshot towards its golden era. The recent merger of two Indonesian tech giants is a testament to the potential of Indonesia's strong digital economy. This is just the beginning of the rise of many startups in the future, from Indonesia to the world.
Hi and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to East Ventures' very first Women with Impact Forum. For those who are not familiar with who we are, East Ventures is a pioneering and leading sector-agnostic venture capital firm headquartered in Singapore. Founded in 2009, East Ventures has transformed into a holistic platform that provides multi-stage investments, including seed and growth for over 200 companies throughout Southeast Asia. I'm your host, Stacy Oentoro, and I'm honored to be with all of you here today. And we at East are very excited to be hosting this series of conversations. So let's pull back the curtain today and contextualize why we are having this conversation. Despite all the innovations and breakthroughs that we've had in tech, there are a myriad of statistics that point to the reality that women remain underrepresented and in most cases underpaid, undermined, and discriminated against. In a Harvard Business Review report released just last February, women-led startups only received an abysmal 2.3% of VC funding in the year 2020. In Southeast Asia, a Deal Street report revealed that for every 45 male partners in venture, there are only 10 female partners. Furthermore, the pandemic has actually worsened the stakes for women everywhere. A McKinsey analysis released this year showed that women's jobs are 1.8 times more vulnerable than men's. Over the years, there's been an influx of global conversation regarding gender diversity in tech. Why? Because in reality, diversity creates higher return for investors and better products and services for the general public. A Boston Consulting Group analysis found that women-led startups ultimately deliver higher revenue, more than twice as much per dollar invested. In parallel, another HBR study also showed that VC firms with 10% more female investing partner hires make more successful investments at the portfolio company level, having 1.5% higher fund returns and even seeing 9.7% more profitable exits. A lot of numbers and statistics, but the bottom line is there is such a plethora of evidence that underlines the importance of the role of women in both VC and startup leadership. But why do we still struggle to see a more equitable, inclusive, and diverse ecosystem? Well, today, we will explore some of these key topics that discuss these very issues. While we are aware at East that we cannot fix these long-standing problems overnight, we are so committed to lead into these issues by having these important conversations. We can all do better in addressing and investing in closing that gender gap that we're talking about. Throughout the next few hours, we'll listen to a number of impactful men and women in the EV ecosystem. We'll hear their stories, the lessons they've learned, the difficulties they've overcome, and the impact that they carry now as leaders in the workplace. We are so thrilled to have you all here today, and we hope that this will be one of the many events and conversations that push the diversity ball forward. Before we get right into it, we have several housekeeping notes from our firm. First, we'd love for you to engage with us in conversation. So there will be time for Q&A at the end of each session. We encourage you to ask the hard questions as we are all here to learn from one another. Second, we'll also have breaks in between each of our sessions to provide time for reflection or really just to give you some space for a quick breather. And last, there will also be a feedback forum for everyone participating today because we're constantly seeking for ways to better our forums and conversations. We appreciate you being here today and taking the time to participate with us. And we are so grateful that you chose a period of your afternoon with us. See you at our first session. It's going to be a really great one. All right. Hi again, everyone. Oh, the loveliness of doing these talks and conversations online is the awkward silences and pauses that happen in between. But today, I not only have the honor and privilege of being your host, but also to moderate this first session. With me today, I have a group of incredible women who have exhibited lives of excellence and resilience, moms who have also have a pivotal leadership roles in their respective fields. Today, I have with me Avina Sugiarto, East Venture's very own venture partner, Sharlini Putri, CEO of Nusantics, and Tita Ardiati, CEO of Mindtera. Welcome, ladies, and we're very, very excited to have you. Before we kick off, we're also going to throw out a poll on Zoom to better understand everyone who is tuning in. So please participate in the poll. It should be popping up here in a second. And we'd love for you guys to just quickly click and pick the button or there it is. Okay, so you can pick which category you're in so that we can better understand our audience here. So while that's being done, I'd love to start this session with a brief introduction from our wonderful panelists. Avina, why don't you kick us off with a short introduction and we can just pass it along from there.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Stacy. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Just a bit of introduction on myself. I'm a venture partner at East Ventures, but most importantly, I'm a mom of two. I have a 3 years old and a 5.5 years old boys, both very naughty, but basically the love of my life. I've been in the investment space for about a decade. Love investing, love my work and what I do here. And in terms of background, I grew up in a small town in East Kalimantan. Now a lot of people know because the capital city is moving in that direction, near Balikpapan. And then I went to school in Australia and the US, came back here to actually follow my boyfriend then, now my husband, thankfully. And then we, started a family since. I think that's a bit about me. I'll leave it to Sharlene.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Sharlene. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nusantics. It's a Indonesian biotechnology startup, which is focused on the microbial testing. So I started Nusantics at 2020, and I am a mother. I have 3.5 years old, a very naughty boy as well, like Avina, and like every day, I can relate with really relate with the struggle of the working mom, like handling naughty babies while handling the while doing the tech startup. Sorry, my connection.
Oh, we can hear you. Hello? Oh, okay. Let's move to Tita while Sharlini is figuring out her connection. Go ahead, Tita.
Okay, hi everyone. Forgive my voice. I'm a bit had a cough today. Well, my name is Tita Ardiati. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Mindtera. Mindtera is an education technology. We are focusing on emotional intelligence and mindfulness. I'm a mother. I'm a mother of two kids. One is 5 years old, and another is 3 years old. And I have spent actually 14 years on as a statistician in a research field. And as of now, since last 2 years, I certified myself as a life coach, and I shifted my expertise into education field. So that's why Mindtera is here right now. Thank you.
Incredible. Thank you so much, ladies, for that wonderful introduction. Clearly, I am amongst just like the company of very incredible women who are very seasoned in the industry, but also it seems like a lot of the leading women have naughty sons, which is very a very fun fact, I guess, from everybody here, and it's credible, right? So, Avina, I'd love to start this conversation with you since we share the same industry. A global report released in 2019 by an organization called All Raise, which is an organization that focuses on empowering and amplifying women in the tech industry, found that only 12% of VC firms had women in investment decision-making roles. So can you tell us a little bit about your experiences in venture and in finance so far? And if anything has changed since you have become a mom? And alongside that, what unique proposition do you think women bring to the table when investing?
Yeah, sure. So obviously the stats is not very encouraging, right? And hopefully we can make that better over the coming years. There's a lot of movements to close the gender gap and getting women not only in the workplace, but also in the decision making and more senior leadership roles. I think what we've seen is, a lot of women actually drop out in the middle career, whether it's by choice, which is very respectfully done, or basically there's a glass ceiling, unfortunately. And I think that's basically what we want to try to hopefully, break throughout the conversations and initiatives that we do. I think in terms of my experience in the investments world, obviously, there are a lot of times whereby I'm before COVID, where I would be the only person, the only woman in that meeting. Right, and it's quite unfortunate, I guess, when we see that, because I think women can actually put a lot different perspectives in decision makings, in contributions to companies and others. So I think in terms of being a partner, a venture partner, I think what we want to do here is really to improve the diversity and inclusion here at East. Thankfully, we have more than 50% of our team members are women. So I think the partners have been very, very supportive. I think we'll hear from Roderick a bit later as well about that. I think as a society, as a company, we'd like to do more in terms of improving that gender diversity for our founders, as well as you mentioned earlier, in terms of bringing more capital to female-led businesses, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, Avina. I definitely agree and resonate with this notion, right? I think as specifically for yourself as a working mom, it sounds like there's so much to juggle in the day-to-day, and it doesn't take away from your ability to be a good investor. If anything, that actually gives you the ability to be a more resilient, a more thoughtful investor, which is something that we definitely need in the venture investing space. So I guess touching upon that, I'd love to throw the next question to Sharlini, right? So Shar, you're a working mom, and like Avina was mentioning earlier, there's a lot to juggle, there's a lot to balance in these duality of these roles. So as a working mom, maybe can you share with us some of the obstacles or stereotypes, or maybe even assumptions that are made about you and that you have had to learn to overcome in your entrepreneurship journey?
Oh, okay. Okay, maybe I want to answer these questions with a different angle, a progressive angle, because first of all, like we are in the tech sector, we know that the next technology is going to be a biotechnology or a life science, right? Because the challenge is very huge. Like for example, pandemic is going to be more normal, and the environmental problem will become a real issue, right? And in terms of understanding this dynamic of life, actually women has the real advantage because we have a lot of empathy and we speak a huge spectrum of communication. So I think I want to share my personal experience because there is true that there is a stereotype that women can have a nice career in terms of the technology, but in fact I was still breastfeeding when I first pitched the idea of Nusantics to the investor. And the idea of Nusantics itself was inspired by a real problem that babies face, for example like eczema and gut problem and another health problem which is linked to the microbial related diseases. And turn out this kind of problem also means a huge opportunity. And this kind of opportunity can be seen clearly from the perspective of a woman compared to men. So I think, of course, there will be stereotype for female like us, but in the future, the game will be different. We are facing real problem, environmental problem, health problem, in which we can only solve this kind of problem by learning the dynamics of life. And we as a female have that kind of spectrum to understand better the dynamics of life stays. So I think, of course, there is a problem, but it also means a huge opportunity for us to step into the tech sectors.
Yeah, that's really great. That's amazing, Shar. And I love how you highlighted just the flavor and the uniqueness of a woman being able to lead a company that is like really addressing the biotech issues that we're facing in our day-to-day. Tita, I'd love for you to share your thoughts on this. Has there been any sort of stereotypes or maybe assumptions that people make about you as a woman entrepreneur, as a mom?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so actually, when I first built Mindtera, I found a difficulty because my background is not from tech, actually. I spent my life as a statistician, as a data science, and but what I see on the problem itself, actually, it's my own personal experience, because I saw that actually I faced a lot of challenge back then as a leader, because previously before Mindtera, I'm a leader in regionals. I found that it's very difficult to juggling between my family and my job as well. And what I found is I didn't think that myself is actually not smart enough. I mean, in terms of like education and knowledge, I had it all. But what's missing actually? Because when I see, I found a difficulty to pick up myself. But then people saw as a woman as an emotional creature. So that's why like there will be a difficulty for us to think logically or to decide a thing, with more logical thinking. But then actually it's wrong. What I can unbreak is I try to search. I try to look for like what happens with me when it's hard for me to decide between my family or my job. So when I'm juggling, and basically most of women's problem is most of us is keeping it with ourselves. That we didn't used to talk to someone or to ask for help. So that's one of problem that I found. And after that, I can see that when I surrender as in, okay, I think this is the time I need to look for help. And I found a lot of options out there. And actually, our emotions, even, women, people always think like, oh, okay, woman is like emotional creatures. It deals with a lot of hormones and everything. So I was like, yeah, we do. But actually, this is something that manageable. We can manage it. So when I found an option on how to manage my emotion, on how to manage my thought, my views, and actually I think it's the stereotype that woman is like emotion creature is not really becoming the barrier to become an entrepreneur. So yeah, I think, yeah, that's one of my stories. So yeah.
Yeah, Tita, I love what you said there, right? About, I think that's a common stereotype that a lot of us share is, oh, you're too emotional, or will emotions actually get in the way for you to build something meaningful in tech or make decisions? But in reality, I think like shifting our perspective, right? And actually being able to see how these emotions really empower us to become better decision makers, because empathy is something that we genuinely need in this world, especially with the current condition, right? Like with Omicron, with the variants of COVID, there are just so many unexpected twists and turns that leadership has to be able to actually be flexible, be able to actually, put themselves in the situations of their workers and lead not just with logic, but, we're all created not just with logic, but also emotions. And I think we should use our whole selves to be able to build something or to make certain decisions. So I really love that. I want to piggyback off of what you just said, right? About, you learn how to ask for help, and, how that's not actually normalized in our culture. As women, I think there's this big pressure for us to carry everything ourselves, work, being a good wife, being a good friend, but also being a good mom. So it's like, oh, there are so many expectations that society places on us, right? So I would love to hear from Sharlini or Avina. So who are some of these key people that you have asked for help, and what kind of support and help have they given to you to like actually move your career forward as well, and to make you a better mom, better investor, better CEO? I would love to just kind of go into this asking for help mentality. Maybe Shar, you can start, and then Avina, you can chime in as well.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So problem do exist like every day, right? Especially for mom. And in the time of trouble, the first one I come to is to my co-founder. And lucky for me, I have non-misogynistic co-founder, right? And then after that, I will come to my husband. He's very supportive. And if my co-founder cannot help, like my husband cannot help either, so I will come to my mom and my dad, see, because like for me, what makes me keep going every day is like I have a very strong support system, because my support system is very solid. They understand the vision of Nusantics. They understand why I do what I do, and they support me like all the way. For example, like every morning, my co-founders understand that I have to drive my boy to the schools. I have to pick him up, and then if we need a meeting, we will set the meeting right after school time, for example, like that. And like sharing difficulties is a very natural things to do, because when we are able to share our difficulties as a mom to our co-founders with a good intention, we will be able to discuss and find out the best solution. Because at the end, being a leader in the tech startup, it doesn't have to be being an alpha female, because in fact, it's like more like being a very good negotiator, right? So we have to be able to express ourselves. We have to be able to discuss the problem to find the best solution. we have to be able to be open, to be open, and we have to train ourselves to be a better negotiator every day.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah, I love what you said. It's the very like Indonesian gotong royong mentality, right? It really does. It takes a village for us to actually be able to perform in our functionalities. Avina, would you like to share on this? I know you have an incredible support system at home as well.
Yeah, I do. Thankfully, right. I really second Sharlene's thoughts earlier. I think for me, first and foremost, my husband has been very, very supportive in my career. Right. I think it will be very, very difficult actually to have a partner who is not supportive. Right. I think how can you go to work if your partner basically is getting you to not do it essentially, right? So I think for me, first and foremost, really thank my husband for being super supportive in the journey. My parents as well, my mom especially is relatively hands-on to my children as well. So having this support system of the family, everyone has been very, very helpful in my journey and my children's journey as well. Whether it's teachers at school who I can contact, over WhatsApp, and others essentially. I think for me, it's don't be afraid to ask for help, and when someone is coming to you to offer help, don't refuse the offer essentially, because I think people are coming to you with great meanings as well, right? So I think support system is definitely a key to really balance and juggle the work and also the family.
Yeah, Avina, so I would love to kind of touch back upon, right, like your experiences being one of that 12% statistic, right? Consistently your role, I think, like being a woman in venture. I think we've heard quite a little bit, right, in the journey of becoming a CEO and also a mom and a wife and the support system that's required to push through. I'm wondering, right, there are these preconceived notions and myths in venture that the VC world is more suited for men, for the very reasons that Tita was actually talking about. Oh, women are too emotional, or when women become pregnant, they're gonna just leave anyways. So like, why should we invest our time in even raising women partners or hiring them? Can you share maybe any pieces of advice for women who are eager to enter into this industry and talk about that stereotype or that really just outdated myth?
Yeah, so I think women, really bring different perspectives on the table, given the diversity compared to men, right? I think, in reality, 70-80% or more of decision making power in households and by consumers actually made by women, right? I think when you start a household, generally women make a lot of the purchases. And being an investor, you also want to be able to understand what your customers want. And if 90% of that decision making on investments are made by men, right? I think there is a lack of different perspectives coming from women who are making the 70-80% of the decision power on purchases. So I think in terms of the biases, as Tita mentioned, I think I was relatively lucky to basically not have to come across those biases forward facing, I would say, right? In terms of the career journey that I have gone through, there are always teams who are very supportive towards women, and as Wilson has been very, very supportive for women, right? We have women partners at the firm as well. We have women team members. So basically joining a company who are supportive towards career development for women will also make it very, very a lot easier in terms of journey being in the venture capital and investments world as well. I can imagine, that journey might be a bit different if you are faced with a lot of biases as well. It's something that we have to confront, I have to say, when we go outside. But I think the landscape is also changing a little bit in terms of supports for women in this space. I think in terms of statistics, it has not yet shown, but I think it's improving from the asset allocator side as well. What I see is, there is a more pressure to have more women basically in the partnership level, in the tech founders side as well, to improve that diversity and equality. So that's been really, really helpful in the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's great to have women as investors, specifically when all of the research pinpoints that it generates higher yield. So it's interesting, right? Why this diversity conversation has taken so long to actually improve over the years. So I want to kind of switch over here to Tita. As a company, Mindtera has this incredible vision to provide solutions and also education to develop emotional, social, and holistic intelligence. And one of the outcomes of that is understanding the importance of diversity within a company or within a firm, right? So in the time that you've spent in actually building Mindtera, and I know that one of your key programs is actually to provide support for both working moms and working dads at work, what has been a common pain point that you've seen and some tips that you have extended to those moms and also maybe even dads in some case in order to address these stressors that we inevitably will feel just as a working adult,
Okay. Yeah, so actually in Mindtera, like you said, that actually we are focusing on multiple intelligence aside of IQ itself. Why? Because it's another option. It's another option from like a mental health provider out there, because sometimes the pain point of this working mom or working dad, or actually people in general, is actually the ability to recognize their stress level, because sometimes people just don't realize that they already like in the the peak of the stress itself, but what they know is just they behave or they act like very reactive or impulsive, and but they don't know actually behind it what is the reason behind it. So why Mindtera giving this emotional intelligence programs in a bite size, actually we want to give knowledge to people on how they read their own movement. Because everyone will experience stress, but what's the different is actually the level of the stress itself. Even it's mild, actually we always have a stress in our life, but the problem is the point is how we are able to manage this stress level so that it's not over and then it becomes burnout and it affects our body, our behavior, our impulsiveness. So that's what we need to learn about. So I think that's very important. That's what I saw in me myself at first, and also with all my clients and all of our user as well. So basically, they never realize that they in which stress level they are in. So that's why they don't know when to go to to the professional, or they don't know when okay, so this is time to take a rest, or this is time to step back. So yeah, so I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like a lot of what Mindtera does is also providing a language to describe how we're feeling at the moment, which I think taking inventory of how you're feeling, both as an entrepreneur and as an investor, it's very important, right? I hear this quote all the time when it comes to building a career, that ultimately it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. So we want to learn how to really go for the long run and then sustain that energy to be able to build, create, and invest. but also how do we get there, right? So, and it sounds like from what you're saying, Tita, a lot of the things that you study at Mindtera and try to actually educate consumers on is the ability to draw good boundaries, right? Like when is a good time for rest and when is the time for you to really challenge yourself and step up to the plate, because both are very, very pivotal in actually building something that will last, right? So, I read Sheryl Sandberg's book recently. It's called Lean In. I'm sure many of the women who love reading has also picked up this wonderful book also. And she talks a lot about how one of the predominant boundaries that she sets in order to actually spend time with her family as a mom, especially when her husband passed away, is the fact that she always puts away her phone. She always puts all business aside when it comes to dinner time, right? It's signaling to her kids that regardless of how busy mommy is at work, building an empire, it's you are more important and they're the priority, which is a very important boundary that, me, myself, I'm not a mom yet, but it's one of the things that really stuck into my mind. So I'd love to maybe ask Avina, right? So do you have any practices like this that you maintain as a working mom, and any sort of, I guess, wish list? Oh, if I could do it all again, this is what I would do to better set boundaries, or any takeaways and lessons that you might have had in the last 5 years, right? Your oldest son is now 5. Any sort of practices or boundaries that you've kept sacred so that you can maintain this balance?
Yeah, so I guess for me, just some practices that I do to spend more time with the kids, right? I actually try to do dinner time, spend time with the kids. And then basically at nighttime, when they already go to sleep, I catch up with some work, and sometimes actually in the morning when they're not yet awake. So I wake up relatively early, then I do some work then to basically catch up as well before they wake up and kind of prepare for school and so on, basically. But I think the other thing kind of in terms of life principle, right? Is another ball. Basically, you have a lot of balls that you juggle. The family and the kids is a crystal ball. I make sure that every time they need me, especially for important matters, like you always catch it, because when the crystal ball falls down, then it will break, right? It's very, very difficult to kind of mend things there, while the other ball will always bounce back in a way. So that's been my life principle and priority. Across these times, there has been emergencies. Kids get sick. My son actually broke his arm in the middle of COVID, and then we have to bring him to hospital and things like that. So working in a company that understands that, flexible working arrangement, for example, some companies have nursery rooms, for women who are giving birth and have to nurse, having education training for career advancement. So that's very, very important, I feel, in terms of choosing where you want to work and how you're creating a workplace that's suitable for working mothers as well.
Yeah, that's really good. Shar, I'd love to hear how you set those boundaries, especially as a CEO, right? Like you get to actually set the boundaries throughout the organization, but how do you do it? How are you the super mom, super CEO in biotech, no less? Can you tell us a little bit about what that's like for you?
Okay. So I think this may sound a little absurd, yeah, but actually I have 4 different scorecards or metrics for myself.
Wow.
Yeah, the first scorecard is about my personal health and personal well-being. The second one is about my baby. The third one about my husband, and the fourth one is about my business, Nusantics. So I don't have any dedicated schedule, for example, every day from 7 to 8 with my children or with Nusantics. No, the schedule is always moving, because if you are working on the biotech and health sector in Indonesia, I'm sure there will be more yeah, there will be emergency meeting like almost every day, every day. So you have to keep your schedule flexible, right? But I do have some key metrics that I have to maintain like at least monthly. So I learned for example, I do some research regarding the child development goals, for example. So I know when I should raise some flag and bring my baby to the doctor, for example, if he's showing some symptoms of developmental lagging. And I also make time to speak deep with my husband to understand what he's doing and how he feel about my my busy activities in Nusantics. And of course, in terms of the professional scorecard, the target is clear, right? Like the growth target and etc., right? But my first principle is that I cannot give something that I don't have. So that's why my personal well-being always comes first. So first thing in the morning, I always make time for myself, like reading books or go running or swimming, because I have to keep my mind and my body at the perfect condition so I can give more to my family as well as my business. And yes, Stace, I do have that kind of scorecard, 4 different scorecard. It's important.
I love that. I love what you said. You cannot give what you yourself do not have. That is a wonderful key takeaway from one of from the sessions today. Tita, maybe you wanna kind of end us here with some practical tips for self-loving or quality time activities for moms and all of everybody here tuning in right now.
Okay. Yeah. So actually, well, for working parents, what one of the most worriness that they have is actually they don't have enough time with their kids or their family. So that's actually what I feel also almost of the time. But actually, 5 or 15 minutes of quality time when we are fully focused on our attention and our energy to the children or to our family, actually it's more powerful rather than 24 hours with them, but our mind is everywhere. So yeah, that's one of my tips. And actually I always did 5 to 15 minutes with my kids before I work or before they go to sleep. But it's not like I spend hours with them, but that makes them, grow attunement with me and grow the connection. And once the connection is built, actually they are more understand to whatever we're doing out there. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
no need 24
Just
hours.
even the 5 to 15 minutes, you're so right. It's actually just being able to intentionally set aside time for each of these very important stakeholders in our lives, right? So kind of a good reminder for us out there is like life is not 100% being a mom, not 100% being a businesswoman, not 100% being X, but it's really learning how to run as a holistic person and spending time with the people that we love, doing the things that we love and sharing life together. Really, really great insights, guys. Thank you so much. I want to also give time right now for the audience Q&A. We have 2 great questions right now. And if you are interested in asking any of these incredible women any other questions, please feel free to do so on the chat right now. But I will go ahead and start off with question number 1 from the audience, from Emerald in pingpoint.co, for all the speakers. So as a working woman and as a mom, have you ever faced some kind of dilemma between choosing between your family and your business or workload? How have you solved this kind of dilemma? Maybe Shar, you can kick us off and share.
So actually, this kind of dilemma will always exist, yeah, because at the end, every day we as a woman will doubting ourselves whether chasing our career and is and whether to chase our career or risking our child development. Because I had experience in managing this kind of dilemma. So, like last year, actually, my boy was diagnosed, uh, to be in the autistic spectrum because he is having difficulties to expressing himself. He has like this kind of sensory problem, and then many people, many people, even myself, asking a question like. Is it the right thing to do to continue a career in Nusantics? Is it is my because when you are having such a kind of problem, like for example, your child is diagnosed to be autistic, you always think that okay, maybe my child needs his mom like almost every day, right? So yeah, but finally what I learned is again, I cannot give something that I don't have, right? So the first thing I have to do is that I have to fight so my personal life is fulfilled first. And one of the way for me to have a fulfilling life is to have a fulfilling career. And I found that energy in Nusantics. And when my child was diagnosed with this autistic spectrum, I choose not to be in denial. So I choose to learn more about what is actually autistic spectrum, how can I deal with that? Like, is there any example of successful autistic entrepreneur, for example? Then finally, I realized that this autistic spectrum is not like a terminal diagnostic, right? So it's only means that okay, my child maybe lagging in a certain development, for example, lagging in terms of the verbal development, but he is also excels in another spectrum, right? So yeah, that kind of dilemma always exists, and that's why the game is for us to understand ourselves, to understand what's our value, to convince ourselves whether our career will be fulfilling, and it's about a greater purpose that something you will not regret, for something like that, Stace.
Wow. Yeah. So finding what really drives us and helps us provide this like holistic balance again, right? That's really great. Thanks for sharing that, Shar, with all of us. Maybe Avina, how is life with two boys?
Maybe I'll add to what Sharlini mentioned as well. I think the dilemmas will always be there, and the more you think about it, the more dilemmas come to mind. Essentially, it's never ending. But I think at the end of the day, if you kind of think about it pragmatically and think about prioritization, time management, right? You think about what's really important, for that particular day, for example, in terms of what to do. I think as Sharlini also mentioned, right, there is this term called ikigai, where you kind of focus on, intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what really contributes to the world, and that really kind of adds to who you are essentially, and makes you more positive and happy. And when you're happy and when you're positive, your family and your child will see it, and they will get that happiness as well from you. So I think that really helps in terms of family relationship. I think in terms of prioritization, right? Maybe one example, my personal experience. Actually, I was traveling to Singapore for work a couple of years ago, and my first son, unfortunately, he has history of seizures. So when I was going there, he had a fit basically, and my husband actually called me when I was just landing there. So at that time, obviously, the family comes first, right? Thankfully, I think going back to the support system, I had my husband, I had my parents who was helping with my son. But basically, I joined one meeting, and basically I then took a flight back right after and canceled all the other meetings in Singapore. So, things like that, I think you are the only one who knows in terms of priorities, and always faced with dilemmas. But I think that's basically what shapes you as a mother, as a professional as well.
Yeah. Wow, that's really great insight, Avina. Just being able to roll with the punches, I think that's the whole concept of being a mom at work, right? So I have another question here, and this one might maybe a little bit trickier and a bit more sensitive. So I'm just going to leave it to the forum to decide who wants to speak on this topic. We have a question from Selena from Elentier. How do you deal with employees whose performance declines after being a mom, especially when they think you would be lenient because you are also a mom? Panel, I will leave you to answer this question.
Maybe I can share my 2 cents.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, I never have an employee that newly becoming a mom yet, but I was there before. I think after my first son born, and then I feel suddenly my performance is declining. But then it's not because of it's not because of we don't love our works or whatsoever, but it's just because of pregnancy and laboring. It's like physically challenge, emotionally challenge. So I think as a woman, that's our most challenging time. So it's normal, but the most important is we need to realize it. So we need to accept it. So because sometimes, like I said before, the pain points of it's not only women. The pain point of people in general is actually they don't realize what happens behind maybe their performance declining or their unproductivity. So the pain points is they don't realize. So first thing first is we need to help them to realize it first, that they have the challenge. Is it physical challenge? Is it emotional challenge? So find out and then try to realize it, to cope up with it. And then after that, it will be rebound faster than ever. So yeah.
Yeah, having that self-awareness, but also as a manager, I guess, right, like what you were saying, Tita, it's really understanding how to lead out of a place of empathy and truth, right? Being able to dispel the truth with also kind of trying to understand the situation. And I think, in all honesty, right, in the COVID-19 period of time, if there's any other period, this is like the most volatile period that I've lived through. And so understanding too that things and policies have to change with the way that the world is moving. And so what does empathy look like in every season? But also maybe, and it's also okay, right? I think there are some moms who genuinely choose to, after having kids, they choose to stay at home with their kids, which is in itself already such a mind, like such a challenge, right? Being a mom is definitely a full-time job that's so undercredited. Maybe Sharlini, you wanna chime in as well?
Yes, actually, I had several experience with that. But the most important thing here is that we have to have that tough conversation. We have don't don't trap in denial. We have to have that kind of tough conversation, because after laboring, after we have baby, for example, the life parameter of the employee is changed. So the priority might have changed as well. Maybe before giving birth, the priority, the first one is career, something like that. And then after after you have that baby, maybe you realize that, oh, my priority has shifted. So maybe maybe the priority have shifted. So we have to have that kind of motherly conversation, and to remind them and asking them, okay, what is your vision? What drives you? So because it may be something like as easy as a lack of motivation, and then they just need friends to hear the problem, to help them solve the problem, and then they get that drive back, and then they get their driving force back to catch up with the career. Or we should help them realize that, okay, maybe it's time for you to stop this kind of career. Maybe it's time for you to explore another opportunity. Maybe it's time for you to be a full-time mom or a full-time entrepreneur or something like that. So we have to have that tough conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, ladies. So we are running thin on time here, and I want to just again thank you so much for spending this time sharing your vulnerable stories and also experiences in navigating how to balance everything as a mom, as an entrepreneur, CEO, being investors. It's a lot of work, and I think the two big takeaways that I've learned from this session is one, to not be fearful for asking for help in order to succeed for the long run. Two, knowing how to create healthy boundaries between all of the things that we have to balance in our lives. But also three, right, being able to actually be able to draw good boundaries to maintain all of like our holistic wellness. So I'd love to end today by asking actually the question from Margareta, and I'm gonna twist it a little bit to actually be able to incorporate the larger audience. So what is the most important piece of advice you have for mothers or maybe moms to be who are going to try and pursue a career? Or I'll rephrase that question too. What is a piece of advice you wish you would have heard before becoming a mom and choosing to be a full-time entrepreneur as well?
Maybe I start, Stacy. For me, I think not trying to be perfect. So I think perfection is gone out the door when you have children now, because they are basically, uncontrollable beings. So for me, not striving for perfection, but basically life is a learning ground. Basically, you're trying to be the best person of yourself, whether you're a mother, a wife, an entrepreneur, a professional, right? But just, trying to be the best person of that, and, kind of delivering that on purpose, basically.
I love that. Not trying to be perfect, being real that this life is messy. Shar, Tita, your pieces of advice for everybody listening?
Okay, my advice is that we as a woman should never be afraid to negotiate, because negotiation is very important if you are you are having a double career. So when life gives you only two options, you always have to fight for the third, fourth, and fifth option.
Wow. I love that. Wilson would love that too. Tita, you can end us off here.
Okay, so my advice is we need to start looking beyond current society paradigm. So we need to look to start having new perspective and breaking our shelf, and that's when the time we are shining out. I think we will going to feel fulfilled by seeing our progress time by time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, ladies. Okay, to wrap up, we'll have a quick photo session here with everybody on the panel. So I think someone in media will go ahead and take the picture. Media, you can go ahead and take it. Alikaya.
Yes. Okay, please turn on your cameras, everyone.
Yes. Oh, yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, if you're comfortable getting on camera for this quick photo op, please go ahead and do that. I know it's always such a awkward thing to do on Zoom, but we would love to see your faces. All right, Alika, ready when you are, you can go ahead and give the cue.
Okay. So everyone smile in 3. Oh, everyone is turning on the cameras. Okay. Everyone smiling in 3, 2, 1. Okay. Next one. Everyone smile in 3, 2, 1. Okay, done.
All right. Thank you so much, Alika. Thank you so much, Avina, Tita, Sharlini, for your incredible that you've shared today. We just want to give you a quick virtual applause for everything that you've imparted. So before we move on to the next session, we are going to extend a 5-minute break. We will restart here at about exactly 3 p.m. for the next session. You will not want to miss this. It's going to be unraveling the stereotypes of women in tech, and we will be able to hear from some of the most impactful men in our EV ecosystem. So we are really excited for this next session, which will be led by the VP of Investments at EV Growth, Alda Wardana. So we will see you back here in 5 minutes, and go ahead and take a quick break. Thank you, everyone.
Hello and welcome to session 2 of Women with Impact Forum. I am Alda Wardana, VP of Investments at East Ventures, and I'll be your moderator in this session. Women, especially those pursuing career in male-dominated professions like in technology, are often targets of gender-infused stereotypes. For instance, women do not have the required skills that men inherently possess. Women are primarily responsible for their children and hence will take more breaks from work. These gender stereotypes appear and revolve around men. So today, we're going to hear firsthand from male thought leaders in our ecosystem on their views of these female stereotypes. We have with us today Roderick Burwana, Managing Partner of East Ventures, Italo Gani, Venture Partner of East Ventures, and Ferry Tenka, CEO of Entrepreneurial Solutions in Circle Orami, Indonesia's largest parenting platform. So Roderick, I'd like to begin. So women-led tech companies receive only 2% of VC funding in 2020. Do you think successful tech venture appears to be led by men only?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Alda. Hi, everyone. I think there is definitely given the statistics, right? There's that perception, right, that the tech industry especially is only for men, right? I think, and this is not only something that we see in the local or regional level. We also see that on a global level today, right? It's very disproportionate, right? And especially if you think about that, a lot of these companies, these tech companies, they actually target women as well, right, as the users, right? To not have decision makers or investors that can relate to the users, right? It's actually a massive issue right now, right? So while today the situation is such, right? I think. Which is why we're having dialogues like this today, right? I think we need to figure out ways to rectify the issue, right? And I think that's where I think today, and not only from a women's perspective, right? And hopefully today we can also share a little bit from the male perspective, I guess.
Great, we're excited to hear more the male perspective. So perhaps, Ferry, you are in a community where women are most of your users. Can you please share how is the dynamics like?
Yes. So I think, can you guys hear me? Okay. So I think I'm privileged enough, right, to be able to acknowledge this on our early days. I think sharing a little bit about our story. When I first started Bilna back then, we didn't really acknowledge about this, right? At the time when we were a small startup, hiring is challenging for us. So we didn't have the luxury even to basically choose whether we want to hire women or men, right? Hiring itself is already hard for us. So at the time, our focus is just growing the team. But then over time, we learned that a lot of our users are dominated by female, right? By specifically moms. So it's very important. It's very crucial for us to have a lot of moms working in the company because it's natural for them to create products, to create solutions for other moms, right? So a few years ago, we started to acknowledge that, and we started to create a lot of policy around, creating a work environment that is more supportive towards moms, specifically towards moms at the time, because in our case, the challenge is to hire moms, right? Once they have the baby, a lot of times they didn't continue to work in the company. So we create a lot of, we made a lot of investment to be able to accommodate mothers to be able to work at the same time, raise the kids, right? So, we make investment like we created a daycare in the office. We hire a teacher to basically manage the daycare. So moms and dads, so not only moms, right, but also dads can bring their kids to the office and they can work there while somebody um, will help them to manage the kids, right? So we do a lot of this kind of investment into the workforce for us to be able to grow, the moms, and to be able to support moms to be successful in the company. So I guess that gives you the insight, right, on how we've been dealing with this matter for a few years.
Right. Thank you for sharing. So what impact has those kind of investments made to the overall business?
Oh, I think it's a lot. Yeah. So for example, right, when we first started Buildna back then, our website is more towards e-commerce, right? Fully is basically it's about sales, right? But then over time, as we have more women, more moms in the company, we managed to expand the business towards content and community, which is today basically the sole driven of our source of customers. So today, Orami, we don't really spend a lot of marketing budgets anymore, but we mostly get our customers base from the users that visit our community or our content. And those are basically built by women.
Right. So now you have a female touch to the business, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Very, very, very crucial.
Great. Great. Thank you for sharing. Italo, I'd like to understand from your perspective. So like quantitative and engineering roles have also been very, very male dominated, right? So would you say that women are capable of performing well in these quantitative roles? And if yes, could you provide your view or even explaining the context?
Yeah, I think nowadays, I think in terms of, I don't believe though there is some difference in terms of women cannot do quantitative or what. So I think one thing that as a company that we need to learn is actually having a diversity between men and women. For sure, there is some difference between men and women. Probably women are more emotional than men. That's why they are very good in nurturing or building something, or building culture or something. So I think as a company, I think it will be great to have this diversity, because I think to have diversity, we'll have a lot of point of views. A lot of point of views can make the company have a more solid idea, especially in the startup when we, as a company, as tech startup companies, we try to build solution out of the problem that we have in the ecosystem. So I think having a lot of point of views, angle of thinking is actually very good in the companies. Yeah, that's my point.
Great, thank you. So can you please share some of the practices perhaps that would enable to have gender diversity in the company?
Yeah, I think one thing that I also noticed, I think very also interesting, Ferry built like a daycare, probably because his company hire a lot of women, because serving a lot of women. But having a diversity agenda, which is, I have a stories in 2010. I work closely with Joris Bastian, and he shared the concern that there's a lot of these great women at certain age or certain time of their working experience, they need to quit their job because they need to have a maternity leave, but probably they also want to be close to their kids until certain age, probably 4 or 5 years. But back then, 2010, this remote working is not as familiar like now. Yeah, so I think with this remote working and and all these the new habit, the new normal that able for people to work from home, that actually empower a lot of these women to be active again. Because I see, even in my experience, I see there's a lot of great women that I nurture at certain age. They want to get married, they want to have kids, but probably in certain companies required to be physical to be office. But with this new era, actually, the era of people can work remotely, so they can be work um, closely to their kids. So it actually is also very common also to see, like in the Zoom call, there's kids running around. As long as it's not like really uh, distracting us, is fine, you know. So I think with this, when Ferry says the infrastructure like daycare, remote working, those kind of thing is really empower. And I think we as a man and also women, we need to be more open mind to accept this gender diversity, because I believe it's something that quite important. Yeah.
Right. Thanks to all the infrastructure of like remote working as well, right? So, can you share, like in terms of productivity, how has remote working been like?
So I think, especially in Jakarta, when traveling time is taking so much time. So I think having this remote working, especially when people need to go to the office, because Jakarta is not a very nice city to travel around. Some of my team, I remember they have like 1 hour a half. Go to the office, or 3 hours to go to the office. So that's one thing actually become more fast. And I think having people, so I think the diversity, that we don't need to hire people in Jakarta as well. We need to hire people all around the world, even in outside Jakarta. That's actually one thing. But I think in the context of women, I see that they have the chance to be more time with their probably if they have a younger son or daughter, yeah, which is good, yeah, or even their father also, they can be close to their spouse, their son and daughter. So I think at the end is also balancing between work and life balance is something very important. Yeah.
Right. So spending less time on commute, but more on meaningful things
Yes.
like family and work.
Actually, I'm quite scary that I need to go back to the old normal, which is going to the office, because I feel that as long as we are professional, we have a very good internal business process, everything should be perfect. This remote working. Yeah.
Right, right. Roderick, I wanted to understand from your perspective.
Sure.
We noticed that a large majority of Southeast Asia-based venture capital do not have a single female partner. In fact, 3/4 don't have a single female partner. Meanwhile, East Ventures have 2 female partners, and in fact, a large part of the team is also women. So, how has your experience been from this kind of setting?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting statistics again for us, right? That I think. And East Ventures, we've grown quite a bit, right? Today, we are close to 60 team members, right, across 2 offices, Singapore and Jakarta. And I think half or more are women, right? And including at the partner level, at all levels, right? And for us, we didn't really design it, right? We didn't really say that, look, when we started a while ago, we said, look, okay, it has to be balanced 50-50 and whatnot, right? And maybe there was ignorance on our part, right? But at least, but for us, it was just, finding the right team member, right? They were very capable, passionate about what they're doing. And that turned out to, be where the team is at today, right? Now, having said that though, right? We're very blessed that, we have all these different insights, right? By having women in all layers of the organization, right? So it's a very conducive work environment, right? I think it adds to the culture as well. And I think what we're looking at today is before we didn't design it. Now we're looking at how can we actually even preempt or improve things, right? For instance, we're now looking to encourage, maybe looking at how we can now encourage the women in our organization to be role models, right, for other members of the tech community as well, for our portfolio, for other parts, right? A lot of our team members, men and women in our organization, especially when we started, were very young, right? In our organization, I think they're going through their journey of their life cycle. So some are now thinking about having families and whatnot as well, right? So maybe we can also start implementing things or preempting things like, Ferry mentioned very nice things about like having daycares and whatnot, right? Or maybe thinking about how we can potentially accommodate those, right? As we build a very conducive work environment, I guess, right? And ultimately, we do believe, right? We do believe that it is very important to be inclusive and include, different viewpoints, I guess, when we look at things, right? Because as an organization, what we do is we invest in people, right? And then we need to always upgrade ourselves, I guess, right? And make sure that we have the right viewpoints, right? From all angles, I guess. Yeah.
Great, thank you for sharing, Roderick. So I'd like to understand to all the ask the panelists, how can we attract more women to actually enter the tech industry? Because a lot of why there are so little women is also women just seems so afraid to be entering such a male-dominated industry. Maybe Roderick, you wanna kick this off?
Yeah. And I think it starts by, well, first, I guess, listening, right? I think, when people have aspirations or whatnot, right? And then maybe after that, we need to help educate also, right? That that these careers opportunities are there as well, right? And it's not only for male and whatnot, right? But then beyond that, we can encourage things, right? I was mentioning earlier, maybe, right? I think we need the community to also participate, I guess, right? So from those that's already participating, like those in our organization, right, to be role models, mentors also for these other women who aspire to be in our in the industry as well, right? So there's different layers, right? And then the last part, maybe I'll say as well, right? And then again, it's not only for women to do this, right, but also for the men in the industry, right, to also do this as well, right? Because otherwise, then you won't have that progress, I guess.
Thank you. Ferry, maybe you want to share?
Yeah, I think like any problems related to inequality, right? I think the first step is to acknowledge it. Right? I think a lot of times, many peoples or many companies don't really acknowledge this problem. Like us in our early days, we didn't acknowledge this. We just try to grow, we just hire, and then we didn't realize it that at one point of time we didn't have enough mothers in our workforce to be able to serve our customers better, right? We were lucky enough that our user base are mostly moms, so we were forced to be able to accommodate and hire more mothers so that our business can grow, right? So basically hiring mothers or having women in our workforce is a survival for us, is the survival of the business, because without moms, the business won't go anywhere, right, for us. But I think more companies out there don't realize it, and I think the first step towards solving this is by acknowledging it, right? Once you acknowledge it, you'll be able to create more adjustment to how you do things, and I think it will be I think any companies can create their own solutions, right? I think for us specifically, managing the kids while they're working was a big problem for our workforce back then. So we created a daycare. But I think the manifestation of that could be different for any companies. But I think once you acknowledge it and once you try to understand the needs of the women in your organization, it will be much easier.
Great. Thank you, Ferry. Italo?
Yeah, in this first, I think we need to understand that tech startup is not about technology, it's not about engineering. Yeah, I think in its ventures, which is we are focused on the early stage. I think one of the key parts also the product person. Yeah, because they are not engineers, and I think I mentioned before. I think um, based on my experience, I think when you build a product in the early stage, you need to be very nurturing. You need to build the culture and everything. Seems that a woman has that strength point to build those kind of things. So I think, yeah, I think maybe the in the public they need to understand what is tech startup, because I think the word tech seems like quite scary as well, not only for women but some non-tech person feel that oh, I need to be an engineer to work at the tech startup. So I think but at the end, like a product person, I think one of the key person in the companies, which is they need to understand the consumer, they need to understand, to listen carefully the consumer pain point to build the solution. So I think those kind of things is actually one of the the thing that for me is I'm having a great work relationship with some of these product person that able to understand uh, clearly. Usually are women, yeah. So I think understanding what is tech startup also important, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Ferry, perhaps do you want to elaborate like what sort of other roles within the organization would women thrive in?
Like specific roles or
Yeah, like
Rami,
Italo mentioned like building products, right? So maybe given women's strengths, like what sort of roles would in your experience in Orami Circle would women flourish in?
Okay, so in Orami specifically, right, we started with the content creation team and also the community, because creating contents that can speak well to a mom's audience are best created by other moms, right? That's also the same case for content, and building the community, right? So I think for us, that's the starting. But then from there, we also learn, like what Italo said, our products, when we build products to solve the problems of our community, a lot of times it's much easier, right? It's much more natural when it's led by other mothers because they can speak easily to our user base, and the solutions usually much more accurate to solve the problems. So in our organization, the team that manage the content creation, community, and also products are mostly driven by mothers.
Got it. So just curious, how big is women as part of the organization now?
So well, if we talk about only Orami, right? In Orami, we have about 65% women. The total workforce is about 250 in Orami. If you talk about Circlo is much bigger. I think we have about 12 to 1200. Yeah, I'm not really sure in Circlo how big the female and male, right? But I think in Orami specifically, we know that we have more women in the organization.
So do you find yourself being uncomfortable working in a setting that is mostly filled by women?
No. Actually, it's quite the opposite for me, right? I think I would be more uncomfortable working in a setting where the men are uncomfortable to work with women. Like I mentioned, I think our survival of the business are really driven by women, specifically moms, right? So in our organization, we specifically creating that normalized environment where men and women are equal, and we work towards the same goal, right? I think that's also like one of the stereotype, right? Like being a parent is a job for mom, right? But actually it's not the case, right? I'm a dad and I'm also a parent, right? So I think it's not to highlight that as well, you know, like equality not only in the workforce but also at home, right?
Right. That's a really great insight that men can also empower women not only in the workforce but also in the family by also contributing to be a caregiver as well to the kids, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So I'd like to also understand from all the panelists, what is your 2 cents to all the people out there, especially in providing equal chances for men and women?
I think the first step towards, sorry, if I can answer first, I think the first step towards that, right? It starts from your home, right? Like I mentioned, I think as a husband or as a father, it's also important for us to create that environment where we allow the wife to be able to be excel in their career, right? So I think it's important to highlight that as well. The setting, because a lot of this problem actually starts from family, right? From home, right? Like the social culture stigma of, you know, women should be at home and not working. That actually the roots of this matter, right? So I think it always starts from home and how we manage the family. From there, I think by doing that, we as a man, right, can also create a better working environment. You know, we can understand better on how to be able to create a working culture or working environment that is accommodative for men and women to be able to strive and work together. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Ferry. Very insightful. Italo?
So I think I totally agree with Ferry. It started from inside from our families, and I think probably because I grew as I have an Italian mother, and you know Italian mother is quite unique. I think my mother is, if you see all the Italian movies with Italian mother, you know how very important role as a mother, like housewives in the family. So I learned the whole, I think I get a lot of mindset coming, values coming from my mother. Yeah, that's different. And I can see the difference when I talk from my friends that fully coming family that is fully Indonesian has a different mindset. Yeah, so I think starting from the family, starting to respect each other between you and your wife is something super important, and from there you will understand that the importance of a gender diversity in the company.
Yeah, I would resonate that part, I guess, right? I think I grew up with a very strong, independent working mom, I guess, right? So I think my whole life it was never it was always very clear, right? Women is as capable or more in certain things as well, right? So it wasn't that, oh, you know, and then at some point in my life then I see that, you know, that's the case, right? So I think you know, home instills that value, I guess, right? I mean, what you see, how you grew up and whatnot, right? So I think I've been very lucky from that perspective that, you know, I have that you know, upbringing, I guess, if you will, right? But is that enough? I don't think so, right? I think we can do more as well, right? So I think that's something that, you know, I think I've never you know, I think before it wasn't about, you know, I wasn't aware of some of the issues, at least, right, that women faces, especially in the workforce, and also specifically in tech today, right? So I think it is something that, you know, I think consciously that, you know, I'm also trying to look at and then figure out how to listen and also acknowledge, and then again try to see what we can do, I guess, yeah, from our point of view as well.
Thank you, Roderick, for sharing. We've got a comment here from the floor saying that women is not deterred by tech. In fact, women love learning to use tech because it helps them in their everyday tasks. But joining companies that build tech is somewhat different because one key factor is the culture of the tech firms. And some places have very bad practices, and it tends to be a culture that is 9 to 6 work, 996 culture, where it's work 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily for 6 days. So what's your thought on that?
If I can go first,
Yeah.
I think not
Yeah.
all tech company has those cultures. Yeah, some of it probably, but I think those cultures are not the one that a good cultures to work with. Yeah, because for example, I know Sociala. I mean, founders of Sociala. Every time I come to like 6 p.m., Chris always look nobody at the office. Everybody already go home. So I was amazed. Company as big as Sociala, they have actually everybody already go home at 6 p.m. They don't like people like working extra hours. So I don't believe those kind of culture are the culture that will be empowered by the tech startup. Yeah.
Especially now, right, with this working, remote working environment, I guess that 9 to 6 working hours is out the window, I think, for most companies. Yeah, but I think the flip side of that is, you know, you can work at any time, right? So I think the key is not the 9 to 6. I think we also faced this back then, right? I think it's very hard for some of our employees who have babies to be able to arrive at the office at 6 and go home at to be able to arrive at the office at 9 and go home at 6, right? So the key is being flexible on terms of when you start your day and when you end your day. But in between, I think you can create some flexibility there. Especially right now, I think back then we've always wanted to create a culture where location, like work location, is more flexible as well. But back then, before the COVID came, we just didn't have the courage to do it across the company. There are some that we make exception of for the remote working, but we didn't make it a policy for everybody to be able to work anywhere, right? But I guess for us, the COVID was a blessing because it forced us to be able to enforce that policy, and I think it works better than it's ever before. So I think this kind of culture is slowly. I don't think it's slowly anymore, right? I think right now most of the tech startup already starting to shift to more flexible working hours and more flexible working place as well, which I think it's going to be a significant ingredients for a lot of women, especially a lot of moms, to be able to excel in the working environment.
Right. What about like when emergencies that moms face at home? Like, how do you provide flexibility around that?
Oh, I think again, like I mentioned, it's the flexible working hours, right? Sometimes they can start very late in the day, but usually they also finish late in the day, right? And I work with a lot of moms who actually WhatsApp me at 11 at night, because those are the time that they are comfortable to work, after the baby are sleeping, it's quiet and they can work then, so I guess as someone whose working hour is more flexible, like me, right? I can work late at night. I need to be more accommodative as well to that kind of working culture, you know, where sometimes some of your employees might need to bother you on at night, you know, or sometimes on Saturday, right? On Sunday even, you know. So that's where we can be more accommodative for them.
Right, right. That's actually very accommodative, very. Thank you. So sometimes working moms also face like family emergencies, like, you know, their kids fall sick, and that actually requires them to somehow, like, you know, tend to their kids more than just like 1-2 hours, but maybe a day. So how as a leader, right, how do you be more accommodative of like you know, deadlines and outputs? And maybe, you know, in terms of team structure, how do you think about that?
I think it's not so. I think that kind of problem also doesn't only happen to moms, right? Dads also experience that, right? We had a lot of cases, especially now, right, where the kids got sick and they need to be in the hospital, right? So I think that happens all the time. So I don't really see that as specifically towards women. But emergency in family, in life always happen, right? I think as your direct reporting line, especially, are the one who basically can replace you when you're not around, right? So I think you need to create that structure where somebody else can replace you in the organization to attend certain meetings or certain crucial tasks that needs to be completed at certain moment, right? But other than that, I think the emergency usually don't last too long, right? So usually 1 day or 2, but then after that you can go back to work, especially with this, you know, flexible working place. I think right now it's becoming less and less of an issue. But I don't know, maybe Italo and Roderick has different opinion.
Yeah, I think
before
I agree.
Italo,
okay, go ahead, Alda. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, before Italo share your view, I'd like to also encourage the audience to type your questions if you have any question for the panelists in the chat. Italo, yes, please.
Yeah. Yeah, so I totally agree with Ferry. This is not only happened with moms, but also with dad. But at the end, it's also happened with me sometimes, you know. So I think the fundamental is trust. You know, when you have a team, you have a culture, you have a trust between the team. You know, yeah, there is this accident that nobody want to happen, but happened. So I think we just to accept it. And yeah, for example, COVID slowing down everything, the whole business. Yeah. So I think everybody understand, the VC understand, the startup understand. So, but it's not something that we want to happen. So I believe if we have a very good culture, a good trust, there is no issue at all, because I think the professionalism of the team and the employees actually will, for sure, she will do something more after that, or something that we have trust in her.
I'll just add very quickly on my end, right? Because I think, well, I'm lucky that our organization is much smaller as well, right? So I think for us, it's a teamwork, right? So whether it's emergencies for moms or for whatnot, right? I think we just cover from each other, right? I think that's the culture we have, right? So I think that's how we look at it, I guess. But yeah, again, it's a much smaller organization that we, you know, for us.
Thank you. So having a really great collaborative culture is very important. Okay, would like to open the floor for questions.
I guess our answers are very clear.
Okay, if there are no further questions, thank you everybody for thank you Roderick, Italo, and Ferry for sharing your insights, for explaining, you know, the how the workplace can benefit by having women as the decision makers as well. And thank you as well for sharing insights on being flexible, on being accommodative, and also empowering the women to be able to flourish in their roles. So right now we are going to take a photo with everybody. So first on the moderators, and then with all the participants. So I'll pass over to Alika, who will be conducting this photo session.
Hey everyone, please turn on your camera to have the photo session. Okay, I'm going to start taking picture in 3, 2, 1. Okay, next line. Please keep smiling, everyone. And 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for joining us. We'll have a 5-minute break before the next session.
Thank you, Alda.
Thank you. Thank you, Alda.
Thank you so much, Alda, Italo, Roderick, Ferry, for that very insightful session. Like Alda mentioned, we will be moving into a quick 5-minute break before our final conversation of the day. It's always so important to see and talk about how men can be better allies to women in the workplace, because we believe that diversity and inclusion can truly only be achieved through a collaborative partnership. There are a plethora of evidence that reveals that gender parity efforts are most effective when both men and women believe they have a dignified and important role to play. So transformation in the workplace is something that we should definitely work on together. And it has personally encouraged me so much to see so many men in leadership who see the value and also the unique flavor that women also bring to the table. So thank you so much for the speakers and for Alda for moderating so well. What a great session. So far today, in this quick break, I'll recap the things that we've kind of moved into. We've covered how moms can balance having both a successful career and being an excellent and present mom, and how many of the preconceived biases regarding women are just bottom line, untrue, and outdated. In this next session, in session 3, our very own VP of East at the seat level, Avina, will be hosting a conversation regarding policies that can help women thrive in the workplace. So tune in to the next session and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone, and hope you have a great break.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the third session of East Ventures Women with Impact Forum. So this session will discuss about creating an empowering workplace for women, and today we are joined by three very strong leaders. The discussion today hopefully will provide a better understanding on the importance of providing a workplace that caters in supporting working women. So I'll be your moderator for today. I'm Avina, who helps to lead the seed investment activities here at East Ventures. And my three amazing panelists today are Roshni. Roshni is the founder and group CEO of the Asian Parents. Jillian, founder and CEO of Homage. And also we have Samira, co-founder and CEO of Tinkerlust and Stellar Women. So before we start, I'd like to invite each panelist to give a one-liner about yourself, about who you are, the company you're building. We can start from Roshni first, Jillian, and over to Samira.
Hey, Avina and the EV team and everyone here who's joined us today. I'm Roshni. I'm the CEO and founder of the Asian Parent Group. So we're the largest mom community platform as well as e-commerce company across Southeast Asia. And I'm so happy to be here today because these days you don't get a chance to hang out with people that you love. And I'm so glad I get to be here with Jillian and Samira. I haven't seen the two of you in the longest time. So I'm so happy to be here and sharing the stage with them and just sharing how I feel about women empowerment and what else we need to do as this ecosystem to support women, to support mothers. And, you know, I'm so happy that the EV team has put this together and you've decided to make women a spotlight today. So super awesome. Thank you for having me.
Everyone, yeah, I think I echo Rosh. It's almost like catching up with old friends. So it's great to be here. So good seeing everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm Jillian. I'm founder CEO of Homage. Homage is a leading care platform, caregiving services platform across ASEAN. We're now operating in 4 markets and pretty excited to be scaling long-term care support across the region with the largest pool of curated carers, out of which 70% are women. I think this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I think I've also had many conversations with Rosh about this. So it's really great to be here. I love that the EV team has put together an entire forum just covering this. So, you know, all here loving the discussion and can't wait to get into it. So thanks for having me.
Hi, everyone. Hi, EV team and participants today. I'm Samira. I'm CEO and co-founder of Tinkerlust. We are the leading pre-loved and luxury marketplace here in Indonesia. We launched 7 years ago, and we are, I think, 80% female team. So really proud of that, building a product for women by women. And I'm also the founder of Stellar Women, which is a platform for women entrepreneurs and leaders here in Indonesia. After launching 2 years ago, we have now more than 12,000 members all across Indonesia. So very excited. And as you can see, I'm very passionate about this topic. Very like claps to the EV team for putting the spotlight today on this.
No, thanks so much for your enthusiasm today, ladies. We just have a whole host of talents here. So I'd actually like to start today's panel with some stories, right? Can each of you ladies maybe share with us some stories about your previous workplace? It can be about culture, environment, or policies even, right? Before you became founders, and how do these experiences kind of like translated into how you are building your organization today? Jillian, we want to start with you first.
Sure. Yeah, I think happy to, right? So Davina, I think when we think about policies, it's oftentimes, and when I reflect back on my own journey, it's how do those policies, so for example, if we talk about equal opportunity, right, how does that translate into the day-to-day? And when I look back, how did it impact me in my journey up to now? And I think a lot of it, does come back to leadership. That's something I firmly believe in. And so if I recall, one of the biggest moments for me personally was when a leader, I had a manager who, he was a guy that was a mentor, a key mentor to me. And one of the key things that he mentioned to me was, how do you negotiate, right? And really be able to have that conversation around equal pay, have that conversation around what it means to be, to put your hand up, have that conversation and about your growth, your journey at the company. And so and for me, that was very pivotal, right? To have that champion, right? Again, whether or not my manager had been female or male, I think that's not the question. It's really about the question of empowerment and equal opportunity. Looking at, when I think back about that conversation with Parkinson, like I still recall, right, how he was really just advocating and he put in an extra effort. So that's one hallmark moment. And I would say one other maybe quick touch point was that I used to think that it was a pipeline issue. So I used to think, there's less, as I sort of became more senior in some of the previous roles that I had. And I'm very used to going into board meetings and into senior leadership meetings or into the Y Combinator bathroom, right, where there's never a line, and I always, it's always empty, whereas there's always a line at the sort of the other bathroom. So really, sometimes to the point where when I enter a room and I see a female leader, I'm like, oh, okay. So that surprises me. So I think going back to that point about understanding, when it, representation, right? So I used to think it's an early pipeline problem. Oh, because not many women are in tech, not many women are educated in technology or are interested in tech startups. And I really changed my mind up 360 degrees about that. And that was through my Y Combinator experience. The founders of YC and so Jessica Livingston, personally told me as well that it is not a pipeline issue. I mean, we have to champion it. So having conversations like today and being very mindful about intentional actions that we can put into the workplace, starting from leadership, I think for me, it's sort of two hallmarks that, has really shaped the way that I viewed this topic and also, of course, became a champion for other women.
Thanks so much, Jillian, for sharing. You talk about equal opportunities, and we will talk about that more in later on. Why don't we move on to Samira? Samira, so you've spent a good number of years living and working overseas, right? Mm-hmm. Any of interesting experiences, like studying or working abroad that are translated into how you are building your company today?
So I think it was really quickly on when I entered the workforce in the States, I realized that one of the added benefits of these huge corporations were their awareness for diversity and especially like employing women and the needs that women have, especially when they take on multiple roles, you know, in their household and so forth. So allowing remote working and allowing flexible hours. So I saw that many of my, you know, my circle, when after we graduated MBA, they looked for employers that, you know, had these specific programs. And at that time, I didn't have a family, so that really, you know, didn't influence my decision. But then when I came back to Indonesia, to be honest, right off the bat, when we started Tinkerless, I didn't even have these same concerns, right? Only after probably around year 2 or year 3, I really noticed this trend. Every time a female employee would come to me and they would resign, top 1 to 2 reasons would be because they were about to start a family or because they had just gotten married and they wanted to expand and they really wanted to concentrate on this. And at first it was like, okay, maybe this is just one scenario, but it was happening more and more often. And at that point, I didn't want to let that happen again, right? So I kind of reflected on my own, like, why did I choose this entrepreneurship journey? It was because of the flexibility and because I could control, you know, my hours and, you know, work hard, but also understand that there are multiple visions of my life that I wanted to achieve. So I decided, okay, as soon as there was an employee that wanted to have that flexibility, we would create that for her. So that was actually the basis of our entire, policy and kind of our vision for these female employees, the future mothers and, future leaders of these households. So I think that like, it's great for us to be mirroring and looking at the West and developed companies as well, because I feel like the more developed companies here in Indonesia, they don't necessarily have those policies in place. So that's kind of like what I've definitely looked upon them to see what kind of policies that we can employ here.
Yeah, I totally agree, right? Having like a greater flexibility in terms of our policies, especially in today's climates, are very important, you know, to cater to the different needs of like a working female, whether they're moms or, you know, wife, a kid, taking care of her parents. What about Roshni, right? Any differences, any similarities to what Samira and Jillian experienced?
No, so I completely agree. You know, I think the experiences are all the same, right? I think the moment you walk into a place, you realize, especially if you're in the tech world, right, that as a woman, you are a minority. And then, you know, if you're in the US, then you've also got your skin color and your race and the fact that you're Asian, as like double minority. And then if you're a mom, my goodness, Lord, that's like a triple whammy against you, right? So I think, you know, all of us have had that experiences, but I think the most important thing is that how are we taking those experiences and translating it back into our workforce? How are we normalizing conversations about the fact that it is challenging, a little bit more challenging for women, and what do we need to do to slightly improve that? And I really enjoyed the panel session before, right, where you actually had men figuring out how could they be he for she's, which is so important because they are half the equation here. And it's not just about being in this echo chamber where all of us are women are talking about the same issues, because we all know the same issues. All of us know it's hard for us, right? But it's how do we get everyone on the same page to realize that, you know, we need to help each other. And if we don't have women in the ecosystem and, and if they're going to be dropping off when they get pregnant, when they get married, and when they become young mothers, then this is going to have a huge ramification on the workforce, on the ideas that we have, the issues and challenges that we're solving for as well, because, you know, we are half of the world's population. We have our own distinct needs that it's going to be very difficult for a male to be able to understand or empathize with. So if we need to be building things for 50% of the world's workforce and the world's population, then we need to make sure that that 50% is represented in the workforce. And the fact is that we do have our own challenges, right? We have a biological clock. We have also, if you've grown up Asian or in Asia, you have society expectation. And these are hundreds and hundreds and centuries old ideologies that you're fighting against. So, how do we make sure that we can mirror all of these experiences and we can normalize it by talking about it, and also about taking our experiences and implementing it into policies, into our own workplace, so that we can make it better, not just for ourselves, but for all the other women that we want to enter into the workforce. And we want them to have the same, to have an easier path than the ones of us who have been in this ecosystem for a longer time, right? Like Samira for 7 years, myself for 10 years, Jillian as well. So how can we make it easier for the next generation of women as well?
Yeah, Roshni, if I remember, if I understood correctly, right, Asian parents are now live in 6 different markets. Like with what you said, right, catering towards like different needs of women, and on top of that, right, amid of the constantly changing situation and different government lockdowns across different markets. Can you share a bit the experiences about maybe your employees or your users? And how do you, at Asian parents, implement policies that can accommodate to the ever-changing situation? Is there perhaps also localization in consideration of this policy making?
Yeah, Davina, such a great question. So we have physical operations in 9 markets. And during COVID, it was just astounding the different types of information flows that would happen in the various different markets and the different types of government regulations and changes, right? So for example, in the Philippines, for the longest time, if you were under the age of 16 or 18, your kids were not supposed to step out of the house. And this was for like more than a year. So can you imagine, schools are closed and the children are home all day, all night, completely at home. They're not going to the playground. They're not going to the neighbor's house. They're just at home. So you can imagine, right, like the kind of trauma, in a sense, that some of our Filipino employees experience, because this is a whole new world that you're suddenly operating in, something that you would have never imagined, even in the craziest of science fiction movies. And not just are you scared about your own health and whether there's vaccination or there's no vaccination, you're also wondering, what do I do with these little cute little gremlins around me, right? And how do I entertain them? How do I work at the same time? And this was happening in every single country. But of course, for some countries, like in Singapore, people were a little more fortunate in the sense that school lockdown was just for a month or 2 months. Whereas in some other markets, there was no school operating for 18 months. So you have to navigate through all of these different things. And I found that for myself as a leader, even though I'm a young mom, right, my experience is not the same as my employees' experience or my colleagues' experience. And I should not take what is happening in my life and project it onto what's happening in their life. It's about listening to what their challenges are. I'm lucky in the sense that I'm married to a husband who's so supportive and who can help me, take care of my child when I have to get into meetings. But not everyone is as privileged as me. There are some who are single parents. So how are they dealing with this? There are some who are, maybe they're not parents, but they're also caregivers because they're taking care of elderly parents. So how do you ensure that you're really listening to the different nuances? Because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So while you come up with different types of policies, it's important to also localize those policies, but make sure that there is a semblance of empathy. Lead with your heart. And I think that's what COVID has taught us, that at the end of the day, we're not cogs in a wheel. We all have our own personal life. And when we build things, yes, you need to build for businesses, but if you're not building for your people, and if you're not building for a human workforce, then, why are you even doing this to begin with?
Thanks again, Roshni, for sharing. I love it when you say that it's beyond policies, right? It's about leading people. You need to. It's about having this empathy, having this understanding towards like other women, other employees who are facing like a different situations in their personal lives. And so after we've heard from Roshni, right, Samira, I'm curious, have you implemented any more flexible policies under the climate, right?
Yeah, so even before COVID, we actually allowed for remote working. We're in e-commerce, right? So there are certain jobs that can be done remotely, like, your marketing or even your tech. So we were definitely more flexible, not like every day, but there was the option. And I think that I would say only less than 5% actually took took that flexibility because they weren't comfortable with it. But when we allowed for them, they were much more comfortable when their colleagues actually took part in it as well. But one of the things that we're very proud of is actually our, paternity and our dad benefits as well. And why I feel like this is also very important is my husband's an entrepreneur, but nobody ever calls him a dadpreneur. But everybody always, flags me as a mompreneur, right? And I think I want to make a note that when companies have a leniency or like they understand that the dad's role is also important in the household, it lightens the weight for their partner. And I think that this is so important as well, that it's like a two-way street kind of thing, where if we allow for males to have that time and have a solid domestic role, then that kind of allows the woman to understand that they also share their partners in this journey, right? So that's like one of the policies that we're, it's very equal. We have a paternity leave. We see that men, they are also parents. They also have children, and they also have to have a dual roles, right? And us having that awareness allows for their wives to also continue their role in their employment and so forth. So that's one of the things. But I guess another aspect is also education and allowance. So I think that females, when they start a family, their vision is a little bit more short term. So one of the things that we try to do to continuously motivate them and have drivers for their ambition is the education allowance, and to understand that, okay, this is the career progression that we see for you here, and this is how we can fit in with your long-term vision.
Great. Yeah, we talked about longevity earlier, and Jillian, earlier you also mentioned about equal opportunities, right? And I guess like many of us struggle to advocate ladies here for ourselves, because culturally most Asian women are taught to be modest and humble in many ways, right? We have been taught to subconsciously actually minimize our voice under the nuances of our pre-existing culture. And this inevitably carries itself in the way most of us are afraid of advocating for ourselves at work. I remember when I first entered the workforce after graduation, right, in tech, that I had this mentality, I should just work hard, bust my ass off, and deliver at 110%. And there is nothing wrong with that, right? Until the review came in and my boss just took a moment to actually recognize and appreciate all the hard work that I've put in. And to know that your work is being recognized, it motivates you even further to contribute more to the firm, right? But oftentimes, we still fail to ask for the recognition that most of our male counterparts can ask without hesitation. So what I'd like to hear your take on this, right? Whether, the challenge is inside out or outside in, and any practical guidelines for all of us here across different positions and different leaderships to just kind of step up the plate and better advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, I think, Davina, that's a really relevant question. So I like to turn the question on its head a little bit, because I think oftentimes the conversation is around what women can do better. And certainly, don't get me wrong, I think when you drive career progression, ownership, right, your stewardship of your own growth, that applies, I think, across gender. So I'll touch on that a little bit more and sort of talk a little bit about how you can advocate for yourself. But I'd like to shift focus a little bit on how we can demand accountability from organizations as well. So, I love Samira's, one of the policies that she just talked about, right? Education awareness. I think one of the policies that at HomeHitch we've always been pretty excited about and hold true to. And of course, before this session, I was speaking to some of our, female homages who progressed through the years. And I think what really came through was helping leadership understand, training leadership to understand that if you have a homaja, whether regards of race, gender, orientation, and so on, who is performing at the same level from a performance incentives framework perspective, and also is performing the same role, do we have checks and balances to ensure that they're paid equally? And that is an important conversation to have. So one thing that I'm really proud for Homage is that we absolutely are accountable to that. There is not a single homager across our 4 going on 5 countries at the moment where we're seeing same role performed, similar performance levels, that where a woman is paid less. And I think to have these conversations is tough, right? Like, oh, I'm just, just starting out. How do I have these conversations? And I think one is, I think, just really understanding how does the management see such, how does leadership see, this culture? What are the steps taken to ensure that there's equitable pay? I think being able to have that conversation very neutrally, it's already helpful, and that oftentimes can be part of that education awareness. And then to reorient this is again a mentor sort of shared this with me before, and she sits on sort of 6 boards, and I love this analogy. So if you think of yourself as a startup, right? If you just sort of build it and they will come, it doesn't. So you have to sell and build at the same time. So they kind of akin a sort of your growth path as a startup, and oftentimes it's about also positioning and understanding, being very self-aware. And having those conversations around speaking up, right? So when I was speaking with Eileen, Eileen is she joined us as sort of an entry-level associate, and now she's our head of account management across 3 years. And I asked her, what did we get right? What are some things we got right? What are some things we got wrong? And I think one of the things that she mentioned was, she was always encouraged by her manager, Darren, who's also been with us for 4 years, to speak up, to voice to have a voice, for her to have a point of view and have that point of view talked about and acknowledged, and be okay with taking up that entitlement of having her voice heard. And I think that level of empowerment, really, it's culture. If it's a policy, it comes from leadership. So I know I'm kind of really belaboring the point, but I hope that challenges, any managers or leaders here, or also people who right now are reporting, to just have that conversation. So what does it look like in our company at the moment? How are we making some of these decisions on incentives and performance banding, and what is our promotions framework? Is it purely based on meritocracy? Are there any accountability data, metrics, and analytics that drives visibility into pay? And not just pay, but also leadership, right? There's a number that bugs me. My entire company, 60-40 is women. So 60% is women, 40% is men. But for our leadership is inverted, right? It's about 60% are men and 40% women. So I think the awareness of being accountable to such dynamics and ensuring that women feel that they can have that conversation, that's a cultural setting that I think really does sort of, fall in the stewardship of managers and leaders. So that's a sort of a mandate I feel like we can talk about more, and hopefully that drives some additional support. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned, actually, you touch upon a really great point about gender pay gap, right? A lot of these issues are actually around this topic. Even a recent statistic shows that women are paid 20% less than men. And, due to the mostly invisible aspect of compensation and sensitivity around cultural nuances around salary subject, right? Many are not even aware about this. So maybe Roshni, right? I wanted to ask about your experience as a founder and previous employee as well, right? Whether you have experienced this issue in the workforce before, and if so, did you overcome it? And any pieces of advices for women here to better advocate for ourselves?
Such a great question. And, I think Jillian and Samira have brought up some great points in this conversation as well. I think, yes, it's all about advocating for yourself, but I think it's also about having some form of transparency in an organization. So for us, it took us quite a while to get this done, but, we spent some time last year to make sure that we did leveling exercise in the company. And that was really, really critical because we felt that people were, had no idea where they would go in the organization, right? Like, what's the next step? What's the next stage? And how much should I really be paid? And, a lot of times the way we interview, the way we hire in Asia is we ask, oh, what was your last salary? What's your expected salary? And then we'll give you what you're expecting, or we'll give you a slight top up on your last paycheck, right? And that's just a normal, typical business practice. But by putting together a leveling exercise, we really understood that, oh, wow, okay, this is how much you should be paid if you are within this band. And by publishing that, first of all, your employees themselves can look at it and say, hey, I'm a level 2. Oh, I thought I was a level 4, or hey, I thought I was a level 1. Okay, I'm a level 2, great. And now I should be earning between this price to this price. So then they also have some framework. So I think it's about, trying to be as transparent as possible. And I think that there's just such a dearth of data, right, available right now. And it's really important for us to be very open and transparent. I mean, Jillian herself will share with you, I sometimes randomly ping her and I'll say, hey, what's your compensation structure policy like? What kind of increment are you doing? Because, I'm trying to get a sense of what's right, what's normal. And then, whenever I create some of these things, I openly share it with all my other founder friends or anyone else to say, this is what should be expected. And it's the same way for something like ESOP policies. Oh my God, ESOP, I could probably have a whole session around ESOP and all the kind of different crazy things I've seen around ESOP policies, where they end up amounting to almost nothing for someone. And yet in the tech startup world, a lot of our compensation comes in through ESOP. So, how do we ensure that we're educating people around it, we're normalizing, and we're having benchmark? I think that's the most important thing, and this is not just in the form of understanding the pay gap, right? But even in terms of founders and like VCs as well, right? By having open benchmark, what is normal liquidation preference terms? What is normal, salary review terms for CEOs, for founders? What is the normal amount of ESOP that should be given? I think as an ecosystem, we can do much better with being transparent, because if we're transparent and we publish this openly for most people, then there's very little chance for anyone to be taken advantage for, because the data is out there.
I love it already. Bringing data transparency, surveys, and tax into pays and promotion. What about you, Samira? Any policies or any thoughts about this? Like a transparency pay and promotion system on your organization?
Well, I mean, I feel like for us, because we're mostly women, I was actually thinking about that. Like, oh, is there a difference, in like male to female salaries in a certain position? But because we're mostly female, I don't think I would be the best case example. But I think I think it's the responsibility of each company and each leader to have those structured pay scales and everything. So that's basically what we do as well.
Great. And I'd also like to encourage the audiences here to post your questions to these three amazing ladies here. Please shoot any questions you have in the comments, and later on during the Q&A session, we'll cover it. We've covered around, the whole system, promotion, pay, advocating for ourselves, bringing the whole transparency into the whole organization, right? And so just to kind of step back from this forum, right? Is there any policies that you have intentionally, I guess, addressed during the pandemic to specifically cater the working women and working moms in your organization, or any policies that you address to kind of tackle the issue of gender inequality at all? I'd like to make it an open panel, but feel free if any of you would like to answer it first. Okay.
So I'll jump in. So I'll share some of the things that we did as a company, right? So we did a lot more things for working parents, not necessarily the gender thing. But, of course, unfortunately, a lot of times, raising a child and the working parent thing falls on a woman more than a male, but we made sure that this was something that we offered to both our female employees and our male employees. So the first thing we did was we set up a group chat for all the parents in the organization across all the different countries. And we were like, start sharing your photographs of your babies, your stories of your babies, your stories of your kids, and really have like the support network of people who are going through the same thing as you. And then you start to normalize conversations, right, around breastfeeding, about potty training and teaching kids and teaching phonics, etc. And then the second thing that we did was we hired a virtual babysitter. And this babysitter would come in every single day. We hired at least 3 or 4 babysitters, and all the different parents of different age groups would have their kids dial in for babysitting and storytelling and phonics for at least 6 months of the whole pandemic. So you could avail it if your kids were between the age of like 3 all the way until 12. So those who were like 10 to 12 were bucketed together. So we had like parents from Nigeria to Hong Kong to Singapore to Jakarta, and all these kids started becoming friends with each other, but they were also entertained for that 2 hours to give parents a little bit of sanity as well. And so till today, like my daughter has play dates every single weekend with Carla's kids, who's our VP of communications. And they've been having these play dates now for like the last 1.5 years. And I attribute my daughter's reading skills and phonics abilities to Carla's kids, because I enlisted her kids to teach my kid how to read. So I think just ensuring that, again, by making it a human first experience. And then the second thing that we did as well was we gave everyone a Netflix allowance or Amazon allowance so that they could just de-stress if they wanted to. So this was available for all employees. But then if you had kids, we also gave you a printer allowance and unlimited photocopy paper, because kids like to color and print out homeworks and stuff like that. And we know that a lot of times parents will think about, oh my gosh, it's so expensive to print. And we were like, no, we're gonna just give you your own personal printer and your own personal paper. And that really was a hit among all the different employees. So small things like this.
Yeah, I mean, I can add on to that. I personally have witnessed Roshni really normalize that. I remember I was early days. I was in the office and she was, taking care of. So I think it was after a panel or before a panel, and the family was there. So I love that. So walking the talk. So on our end, I think because we are a caregiving company, and parents are the ultimate caregivers, right? So. One thing that we do is sort of give that flexibility. So we have a hybrid remote working policy. So we implemented that 2 days a week or 1 day a week. And of course, if they have certain commitments, particularly we have some families, where unfortunately they're dealing with kids who are, their children or babies of having some medical conditions. So that's where we, of course, allow flexibility, right? Complete remote work around sort of the key medical appointments. So that's one. We also implemented something what we call Wellness Wednesdays, which is, it's of course for those who are single, who are not parents, they can take the mornings on Wednesday. So it's either Wednesday morning or the whole chunk of the afternoon. They're able to either accompany one of our carers for care visit, volunteer if they're not a parent, or they take time to sort of spend time with their families, or we generally encourage a fitness activity. So something that adds to their wellness, counseling. So it's really, I think for us, for us internally, I think if we're not able to take care of ourselves, then we can't empower caregivers. So that's sort of that mantra. And then another one, this is probably a little bit more subtle. And I really, going back to sort of echoing Roshni's point, right? So normalizing, I think, takes place from how you talk about performance. So we have just very, very quick example. In the last 2 weeks, we have our global head of content and communications go on maternity leave. I think the way that we announce it and talk about it and have the team support on what happens when she's back, and she's also already have those conversations about what she's going to go through and the journey, I think it's important. And it's important not just from a leadership perspective, but also for the town hall, right? So for the town hall, we actually talk about it, right? We're congratulating her on a journey, a new phase of life. And again, we're normalizing. She's an important leader in our organization, and just because she's taking 3 to 4 months, and she's also policies that she can share her leave, so that she has a shared paternity leave with her husband. And we're pretty proud of that, because she can leave with a peace of mind that the company is there to advocate her continued growth. It's not that, she's kind of just took herself out of the game and her future is a question mark, right? So knowing that she can have those conversations, the team has lifted her up when she's on her way to kickstart her maternity leave. She's constantly dropping texts about what, she's waiting for the baby to make her surprise arrival. And so I think it's important to normalize these conversations. I think I'll just leave it as that. There's a few others, but I think those are some key highlights. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. I love it, from Netflix compensation to more accommodating, environment to new parents, right, who just came back from their maternity or paternity leave. In the previous session, right, I think we've discussed about having more women employees in the company across any positions of leaderships is actually helping the companies to be more innovative, agile, and it's actually improving overall business performance, because women bring a different perspective in decision-making approach. But also we heard from the men's panel that hiring in itself is already a big challenge enough, let alone deciding men or women. So I'm also curious, right? What would be your take on this? Maybe Samira, having like a more gender inclusive organization.
Yeah.
I know like Tinkerlust in itself is a very female dominated team, but how does this like having a more gender inclusive organization impacting the overall culture, longevity, and sustainability of the company, while also like balancing the hiring struggle?
Yeah, so I think it comes from an awareness as well about diversity and how diversity can really impact the positivity and the benefit of the overall company. So it has to come from like the entire system, right? Like, okay, if we're seeing that there's not a lot of female representation in mid management or leadership, then taking the steps to actually recruiting those types of profiles into the organization, and what would make them actually attracted to the company and the role itself. So I think that's one of the things. Actually, Stellar is working with government organizations here, BUMN, because they have a quota of 2% leadership in their company structure, but they cannot meet that quota. So from the government is actually given that mandate. And so we're working with them to how do we make sure that these women are progressing into leadership roles, because there's like a massive drop off during the mid management. So it is not like, as mentioned before, it's not a pipeline, right? Like in terms of like college graduates, there's as many females as there are males. But then when we get to that mid management, when they're starting to have families, have other priorities, there's like a massive drop off. So when we're looking at the C level or even N-1, we're not seeing that same equal representation. It's not even like 40 to 60 in government organizations here. We're seeing like 10% to 90%, right? It's crazy. We are a true minority. And so it's really about each organization understanding that they do have more impact. They actually have the resources to make a change, but it is such a systemic change that it happens very early on in a female's career progression, that we kind of have to be very intentional with the program. So it's not just about the policies that's being implemented, but also the programs. Like, for example, one of the things that we're helping these companies do is create communities within their corporations, right? So as you can kind of see there's a lot of female communities springing up because there's a need for this togetherness of females, like female leaders, female entrepreneurs. But within these huge companies themselves, because they have a lack of this, they don't have that, they don't have that WhatsApp group that Roshni created, which I feel like is amazing. I would love to be in that WhatsApp group. But so these companies, these huge, with thousands of employees, they don't have that basis of communication and connectedness that females are, experiencing together. So oftentimes they feel alone. So I think it's about understanding, okay, these are these are initiatives and programs that they have to invest in. It's about, bringing these women together, giving them, a spotlight to relay that we kind of understand what they're going through, and then creating these long-term programs that mirror their career progression as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we talk about like this having more intentional and thoughtful approach, right, in designing not just policies, but programs. We're talking about sustainability here, longevity over like a career progression. But, on the flip side of the coin, we also understand that sometimes it might not be that easy to apply all of these new programs, initiatives, or policies in the company. Do you maybe, Samira, have any suggestions on, for the companies here, right, that are faced with this kind of situation? What would be the ways to overcome them?
What would be the ways to overcome? What is it?
So I think we're talking about like intentional policy making, and like having more like thoughtful like programs over like career progression, and more like gender inclusive approach. But also like sometimes it might not be easy to apply these new initiatives or policies in the company. Any suggestions for the companies?
Well, I think it starts with the leaders. They need to have complete buy-in. So it's a long-term goal. It needs to be a part of their entire company culture and mission, So it cannot just be siloed into the HR department, but it has to be, part of every single movement in the company, right? So if the leaders have not bought into this, it's going to be very we're going to face a lot of pushback, because it's never going to be a priority, because it does take resources. It takes resource allocation and budget, right? So if it's not going to be part of the leaders, mandate, I guess, then it's not going to happen. So it starts with leadership and kind of like their personal belief in the importance of this.
Thanks, Samira. We also have a question for Jillian here from the audience that, how do you address concerns from VCs or investors who may question that too many female employees are taking maternity leaves? It may be affecting your growth metrics, your return metrics. How do you address this normal perception for women who came back, right? To have this, it is okay to have maybe a lower productivity or output during their first year. What would be your thoughts on this?
If a VC is asking me that question, my answer is simple. I'm not going to take money from them. But okay, jokes aside, I think it's a real problem, right? I mean, there's a real problem here. Leadership, C-suites, P&L roles, boards, huge differentials, right? 1-2%, 10% in certain countries in Asia, APAC. Singapore is, I think there was a, slightly better in terms of averages, but it's a real problem. I think about this a lot, and I think that the truth of it is this, and the previous comments from the previous session does resonate with me, Avina, because I'm really trying to hire like crazy right now. So it's so hard to hire across board. But I do see, if I look at my applicant pipeline for leadership positions, it skews heavily towards male applicants. For our less than C-1 applicants, there is a little bit more equal distribution. And that troubles me, right? So the question is, of course, we're going to hire based on qualification and experience and the right profile, the right background. But my biggest question now is, how do you make it such that we know it's not a pipeline issue? So is it a smaller pool at this point? How do we really get ourselves out there? So if we were to differentiate ourselves as an employer from a branding perspective, how do we make sure that we know that we are, that we encourage more women, senior candidates to apply and be part of that sort of consideration set? It's a tough one, and I've had certain questions, certain answers thrown back at me and saying, "Well, you're the best." You just talk about sort of just be more out there yourself because you're the best role model. So one of the key things, and that kind of took me aback a little bit, but one of the key things I think it's why it's so important to have conversations like this, and is that I used to sort of think, okay, you know what, 50% of the population women, more talent equals better business. That makes sense. But I realized that to go the extra mile means that you have to be more vocal, because at the end of the day, women are looking for role models. And when there is a role model saying, oh, okay, so that's the path and this is how you deal with it, and a lot of the transparency that Rosh was talking about, having these real conversations around how to deal and work around kids and family and other commitments, it becomes an achievable material reality for someone. And I think in order for us to attract, I'll be quite frank, I'm solving for that problem myself, and I'd love to get others' perspectives. So I think there's some truths, right? VCs, investors, I think if they're anchoring the question that way, probably, I think particularly in this part of the world, hiring is such a problem at the moment. So it's also, I think if they're anchoring that way, I probably would sort of ask about what do they think about sort of their own work policies, right? So definitely EV is not one of those. So
going back to the original VC remark, right? If any VC would ask you that kind of question, you should leave them out of the cap table. We don't need that kind of toxicity around here. So I know that time is running up. But I still would like to end the session for some closing remark. I'd like to ask you guys this, right? If you could give any piece of advice to your younger selves, especially when you started off in the industry, what would it be? We can start with Roshni first, and then Jillian, and over to Samira.
So if I could give advice to my younger self, so I think there's a couple of things that I would first advise myself. The first one is, if you do plan to marry, make sure that you marry right. So I think that is the most critical advice for both male and females. Your life partner is the person that you're going to be spending the most amount of time with. Make sure it's someone you trust. Make sure it's someone you think is your equal. Don't let it be a fleeting romance because you thought he was hot or he thought you were hot, etc. Make sure that it goes deeper than that. But make sure that you all have authentic conversations about what you want to do and whether you want to have kids and how would it look like, and division of labor and stuff like that before you get married. And so it's so important to choose your life partner correctly. The second thing would be to make sure that don't be so hard on yourself, because it's a long game. It's not about the days. It's about the years. It's about the experience that you build. And are you becoming a better version of yourself tomorrow? You're not expected to be perfect from day one. So don't be hard on myself, and to give myself the time to learn, and to also give myself opportunities to have lulls in my career, and that's okay. And then I think the third thing that I would have advised myself is that women can be each other's best friends or our worst enemies. And it's really important to have that authentic friendships right from the beginning, and to be genuine with each other, and not tear each other down, because there are so few slots available for women out there on the boardrooms, in senior level positions, etc., that sometimes we end up being competitors to each other, instead of really going out there and saying, how do I help another woman out? So I think, that's something that in my 30s, I started focusing a lot on, and that has given me so much of joy in my life. The kind of friendships that I have with other female founders, as well as knowing that I'm going out there to help another woman out. And I wish I had started that when I was younger, and I wish I was not as competitive with other women, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's every woman who's successful is, you know, one positive thing for the world as well as for the business industry.
Jillian, you want to comment or add anything?
Yeah, I think just one thing. Yeah, just be okay with just. Interestingly, it's a bit controversial, but be more entitled. So meaning, you know, you don't have to apologize for what you want, who you are, you know, the choices you make in life, because there's this thing that came up from a TED talk, right? Men are trained from young when you were born to be courageous. Women are cultivated to be perfect. So back to Rosh's, you know, don't be so hard on yourself. It's okay to not be good. It's okay to not be perfect. It's okay to be really bad at something, but still trying. And if you get judged tougher, so be it. And, you know, so just sort of have that thicker, sort of just let things roll off your back sooner. So I think, yeah, just be okay, you know, being flawed and just keep going and just do what you want. Do what you want, really. Yeah, you want to be married, you don't want to be married, you want to take a break, you don't want to take a break, you want to be tall, like you want to wear some kind of clothing, just whatever you want. You can be entitled and ask her and talk about it. This is the choice. So that's probably it. Yep.
Samira, any piece of advice you would give to your
probably to my younger self. I mean, I actually wish I was still my younger self with that, you know, with that blind confidence and that risk-taking heart, right? But I would say stand up more, you know. I think that women kind of wait to be asked, but if you don't stand up and ask for what you want, then it's never going to be given to you. So that's, I think I learned that very early on. It's okay to know your worth. It's okay to negotiate. It's okay to communicate. It's okay not to be liked by everyone. Because I think if you're liked by everyone, you know, you're not being your authentic self. And it takes time to be okay with that and being uncomfortable. So that's probably what I would say, you know, just go after whatever you want, because in the end, if you work hard, you probably deserve it.
Great. Thanks so much, ladies. If I were to summarize some of the key takeaways here, right? Marry the right partner. Don't be so hard on yourself, and befriend more female founders and lift each other up. Don't be so apologetic, and be more proactive instead of being passive. I think the overall, you know, conclusion from the panel here is that we can always be better in introducing policies to address the gender inequality that happens in this industry, right? Which is the reality of it. I'm very grateful to be part of this forum, and hopefully this will be the first of many conversations we can have in order to improve the gender equality in tech for women that come after us. Thanks so much to the great panelists, Roshni, Jillian, and Samira. I'd hand over to Alika to take the group picture of us.
Okay, please turn on your cameras, everyone. Okay, I'm going to count. Everyone smile in 3, 2, 1. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Davina, Roshni, Samira, and Jillian. What a dynamic and incredibly thoughtful session. There were so many nuggets of wisdom from each of you. I feel like my mind was genuinely being blown every 30 seconds, and every piece of wisdom and advice that you gave to the entire audience. I love that the entire nuance of the talk basically spelled out that when women support women, the world truly does become a more amazing place. Thank you for discussing the importance of leadership in driving key policies that make a difference in pushing gender equity forward in an organization. And may we as women always use our voices, even in a culture and world that constantly wishes that they could silence us. So With that being said, that was the final session from this forum. To everyone who attended today, thank you so much for tuning into East Ventures' very first Women with Impact Forum. I personally have learned so much from these conversations. And one of my favorite takeaways from the entire day is that we can always be doing more to push the gender diversity and inclusion ball forward. We can always be doing more to support the women around us, and we all have work to do. And how exciting that we all have so much more to learn together. To all the attendees, we would love for you to share any feedback regarding today, because we always want to hear your opinions on what you thought was helpful and what we can be doing better next time. The link to the feedback form will be in the chat section. Again, we hope that this conversation will be the first of many that moves the needle forward. And hopefully the next time we meet, we will see more diverse workplaces, more women decision makers, more women CEOs, and more funding for companies who have women founders. Let's commit in creating a more equitable world together. We hope you enjoyed today and all of the conversations that we've had so far. And thank you so much again on behalf of the East Ventures team for spending your afternoon with us. Till next time, and have a great rest of your week, everybody. Thank you.